Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Venezuela is in a world of hurt, and they want their $550 million worth of gold back from the Bank of England. Indeed, look at all this gold here. The deepening economic crisis of Venezuela means its government wants to get its gold reserves worth more than $500 million. Now, as we know, they have already repatriated a lot of their gold, but I guess they have more with the Bank of England. The deepening economic crisis in Venezuela means the government really wants to repatriate its gold reserves. I guess the rest of them, worth more than $500 million. Reuters reported on Monday that Venezuelan authorities had approached the Bank of England about getting back approximately 15 tons of gold bullion held in the bank's vaults. It's common for emerging market governments to store gold within the central banks of more developed countries. Citing two sources with direct knowledge of the operation, Reuters said that the plans related to recently announced sanctions by the U.S. aimed at disrupting the South America's country's gold exports. President Donald Trump last week signed an executive order to bar U.S. persons from dealing with entities and people involved with corrupt or deceptive gold sales from Venezuela. It's unclear whether Venezuela now has the gold held by the Bank of England. Reuters described a public official as saying the bank had sought to clarify what Venezuela plans to do with the gold. The Bank of England declined to comment to Business Insider. Venezuela has in recent years been a major seller of gold, and this year alone it had sold about 26 tons, worth close to $900 million to Turkey. Well, that's interesting. Take a look at that. In the past 4 years, Venezuela's gold reserves have decreased to about 175 tons from about 400 tons, Reuters reported, citing statistics from the country's central bank. And here we do have that article from Reuters that's still loading here, but we'll go back. Venezuela has been selling its sizable gold reserves built up under Hugo Chavez to try to address the economic crisis plaguing the country. Hyperinflation of goods means that everyday items are unaffordable for many Venezuelans, and poverty and violence are widespread. In fact, things are so bad in Venezuela that when I did a video talking about showing how much, cash it took to buy a roll of toilet paper, my calculations were off because it had been revised yet once again. Here we see that that Trump has increased pressure on Venezuela with sanctions on gold. U.S. President Donald Trump had increased economic pressure on Venezuela's leftist president, Nicolas Maduro, on Thursday with new sanctions aimed at disrupting the South America country's gold exports. Trump signed an executive order to ban anyone in the United States from dealing with entities and people involved with corrupt or deceptive gold sales from Venezuela, Trump's national security advisor John Bolton said in a speech in Miami. The Maduro regime has issued this sector as a bastion to finance illicit activities, to fill its coffers, and to support criminal groups, Bolton said. And who knows? I wouldn't trust the gold coming out of Venezuela now anyway. And who knows? Speaking of Miami, that's the port of Miami, which is where a lot of that dirty gold has come from, that has been involved with RMC, Republic Metals Corporation, and some other companies that I've done a video about before. Bolton made the announcement as part of the pledge to crack down on what he called the troika of tyranny in the Western Hemisphere, naming Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Miami is home to large numbers of immigrants from Cuba and Venezuela. Bolton made his appearance there just days before the U.S. congressional elections that include close races for a Senate seat and the governorship of Florida. Bolton's remarks were likely to be well received by those Cuban Americans and other Hispanics in Florida who favor stronger U.S. pressure on Cuba's communist government than other leftist governments in Latin America. Bolton spoke at Freedom Tower, a building where Cuban refugees were welcomed in the 1960s following Fidel Castro's revolution. not to be confused with the recently built skyscraper World Trade Center 1 in New York City. This was a day after Trump campaigned in Florida for Republican candidates. Today is election day as of the recording of this video, and Florida is one of the closest states for both the governorship and the Senate races, and it's a swing state, and its races have been very close there for sure. There's a harder line on Cuba, and Bolton said that Cuba is aiding Maduro's government in Venezuela, referring to the close ties between the two countries since Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez, came to power in 1999. Trump has taken a harder line on Cuba after Obama sought to set aside decades of hostility between Washington and Havana, and he also rolled back parts of Obama's 2014 detente by tightening rules on Americans traveling to the Caribbean island and restricting U.S. companies from doing business there. The article kind of goes in that direction, but nonetheless, here we see Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro touches a gold bar, speaking during a meeting with ministers responsible for the economic sector in Caracas, Venezuela, in March of this year. Quite interesting indeed. So they want their gold back. In August, going back to the other report, a report from the International Monetary Fund said that Venezuela's economy was expected to contract by about 18% this year, while inflation was forecast to reach a whopping 1 million%. Wow. Interesting indeed. So this is definitely a one of those things, that when countries get desperate, that's when they're going to look to gold. Just as for you and I, if our economic situation gets desperate, that's where we go to too. And this is why we accumulate gold and silver, because we understand that it is a preserver of wealth. We are our own central banks. And in this case, it may be tough. I don't know. We'll see what happens with Venezuela if they can get that gold. That's $500 million worth of gold from the Bank of England. We shall see. But you and I, when we hold gold, we literally hold it. We're our own central banks. We hold it, we guard it, and we treasure it. Now, I'm not against some people, if they want to store it off-site in a secure location. Some people do that for the convenience and the like. The pure gold and silver stackers may opt to do that measure. But just understand, in a world of a great crisis, you have to, you pay dearly for that, and storage fees and other things, and the fact that, if you do need it quickly, you can't get it quickly. And I do like the idea of holding it yourself in your hands, in your own hands. But nonetheless, there are creative ways of people doing off-site storage. But off-site storage is a thing that, third world nations and other nations have been doing for quite a while, storing their gold with these other entities, with first world nations such as New York Depository and the Bank of England in London. Fascinating indeed. So post your thoughts below about this news, and is that all the gold they have left? And what will happen when they sell all that gold, continuing the same policies that they're doing with reckless abandon? And what's going to happen to Venezuela? It's going to be quite interesting and fascinating to see where things go here with the socialism experiment that has been failing every year. It's been tried since 1999 in Venezuela. Very sad for that country. And it's sad to see that their gold, if they do repatriate it, will just disappear and go into corrupt hands. Or even if they were to try to save their people now with it, it'll only be a temporary savings for them if they continue with the same policies, because those policies have been proven time and time again to fail, for sure. It'll be quite fascinating. So post your thoughts below about this story. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to all my viewers on this election day. I hope you went out to vote today, and encourage you to please rate, comment, and subscribe.